What's up, guys?
How's it going?
Joe. Good. We're just hanging out at the Capitol here today in sunny Salt Lake City. So thanks for making the jaunt down here. It's good to see you guys. So we got Crown Burger.
Yeah.
The Silicon Slopes.
Yeah, it's Silicon Slopes this week. So for the audience in Salt Lake City, they have a annual conference called Silicon Slopes where, I don't know, it's like a tech event here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so you bring in a lot of tech speakers like Tony Robbins. I'm kidding.
Wonderful tech speaker.
Yeah, he's the most qualified tech speaker there is. So anyway, for people who don't know who you are, do you guys want to give a quick intro? Maybe starting with you, Chris.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Chris Brousseau. I specialize in linguistically informed NLP. I've been doing it for a long time, and I really enjoy it. I'm at Nerd United right now, and yeah, that's about it. I love language. I'm a huge word nerd.
We'll get into that in a bit. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, Matt Sharp. Been working in the ML AI space a little over 10 years now. Done everything from data science to ML ops, all the engineering and ML building in between. So just really love data.
Apparently. Yeah. And we've known each other for a while.
Yes.
I think from the pre-COVID times, we'd meet each other at local data meetups and whatnot. Chris, I think we're newer friends, but
yeah, it's been about a year.
About a year, yeah. So that's awesome. But you guys are staying really busy. I think we wanted to talk about a few things. Thoughts on generative AI in general, but also you guys are writing a book on the topic, so
yeah,
unpack all that stuff.
Just went into early access yesterday, and
congrats!
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, for the audience, I'd be on. I think it's a MEAP, MEAP, Manning Early Access Program. So go check out. What's your book called?
LLMs in Production.
LLMs in Production.
Yeah, that's good.
So I mean, it seems like that everyone and their mother's writing a book on LLMs right now, and everybody and their brothers is using LLMs. So but you guys are taking the approach of like production. So I guess how much are you seeing people actually deploy these things in production?
Yeah. So I think most companies still right now are at the, hey, let's hit Open API, OpenAI's API, I should better say. Mostly just using the tools out there. Really struggling, mostly working through, prompt engineering, making things better. And that's all great, but we want to essentially help the companies go a step further. There's lots of reasons why people wouldn't want to use a third-party API. They want to have a little bit more control over the whole process, and so that's a lot about what our book is about.
Well, and we're trying to specifically target the fact that we're not writing a book to have you go and replace Jan LeCun as like an AI god.
Why not?
Well, it's really hard, and I can't do that, so I can't write a book on how you would, right? But I can write a book on how to get you to use open source models in the best way possible, and how to control what comes out of them, and how to be able to predict what might come out of them in particular scenarios, and how to deploy them effectively and cheaply.
Right. That's really interesting. So I guess let's dive into that then. So kind of backing up large language models, how do you build them?
Yeah.
There are a couple of stages to it, right? The first one is you have to do some sort of a self-supervised pre-training.
Okay.
Where you essentially try to give the model the ability to embed trillions of tokens into something meaningful. And that's really difficult considering the only ways that we have for making those embeddings are based entirely on syntax and frequency. Just where does a word appear in a sentence and how often does it appear in that position? Right? And it's hard to get it to really represent meaning in that way. And so lots of smart people have devised tricks to try and insert that meaning later again, and that's your first stage. And then you have a language model, which could be like BERT or a GPT-X model, whatever. The second stage is the one that we focus on a lot more in the book, because it's a lot more interesting for that production factor, and that's fine-tuning or transfer learning that pre-trained model on a downstream task, like being an HR chatbot or being a Slack bot. And it ends up being a lot more interesting because you have your own data and you have your own stuff and you have your own expectations of how it needs to work.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, so Chris kind of hit a lot of the data science aspect of it, but a lot of this book, we help understand that, but we also help you understand the engineering side of things, because LLMs are just really big. That causes a lot of engineering challenges as far as, making sure that you're distributing across multiple resources. These models do not fit on a single GPU most of the time, and so you have to do clever tricks about that. Also, quantization, and just there's a lot of engineering marvelty around it, and so that's one of the exciting things that we write about as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it really complicates data curation.
How so?
Well, because when you're putting in trillions of tokens, how do you make sure that the model at the end of it is able to give you the output that you want? How do you make sure that it doesn't take on the voice of somebody from your data set,
How do you do that then? Because I think that would, there's definitely some contamination risk, I would imagine.
So that's an unsolved problem at this point. There are a lot of things you can do to mitigate it, though. One of the ones that we talk about in the book that's pretty popular nowadays is retrieval augmented generation, RAG, where you essentially create a data set separate that your model may or may not have trained on, but then you take your trained model and you allow it to query that data set at runtime. Right? It can help tune things and put up, I like to call them guardrails, kind of like when you go bowling, so that if it goes too far in one direction, it can bounce back.
I mean, another aspect, though, also comes, making sure that you choose the right base model to go off of. And, some of these models were essentially just trained on pretty much the entire web, and unfiltered, uncleaned, maybe a bit deduplicated, but not much other than that. And then other models we see are trained on a lot less data, like the Falcon models, but they have been gone through with some level of meticulousness to make sure that the data is cleaner, and they get much better results. And so understanding kind of the main model, what it's been trained on, as well as knowing how to go in and kind of clean your own data before you go to the fine-tuning stages, and exactly how to prepare it for what you want to do. And so those are some of the things we talk about as well.
It's really interesting. So, backing up to the book, so you guys have obviously worked in the data space for a while and have probably read a lot of books. And why did you decide to write a book, especially on a topic that moves at, it seems like, warp speed? It seems like this field is changing every couple of hours.
Yeah.
So,
part of it is because we're seeing a lot of myths kind of just emerging in the space about what is the minimum cost of building or running these models. And a lot of that is kind of disheartening to see that, I've deployed models, I've trained models for really cheaply comparatively. I think the cheapest one that I've done was a 20 billion parameter Star Wars model. It costs all of about $200 to train for data acquisition and curation and then training, and then I just host it on an extra laptop at my house, so I'm just paying electricity, right?
So what does this model do?
Oh, it's a multimodal Star Wars model. It'll give you text or images, and I've been working on trying to get it to do video. So it takes in text and it gives you kind of whatever you want out.
Really?
Yeah.
So could I tell it to have Chewbacca go ride a horse or something?
Yeah.
And it would make that happen?
It will. Yeah.
Well, that's the future I want to live in.
Yeah, you're saying that confidently, like you've tried that before.
It's I haven't tried really a horse, but I've tried other stuff.
Oh,
like Chewbacca riding an ATST, or
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's fun.
Hilarious,
I've used it to generate stuff for I don't know. I'm a big fan of Star Wars and Knights of the Old Republic, and I like having it generate stuff that could have happened there.
Interesting.
Yep. Going back to your previous question, though, I think we're both a bit masochists. I think, when we started writing this book, started talking to a bunch of other authors, you included, trying to understand more about the process before we jumped in. And something we realized is that a lot of authors, a technical book, they're difficult to write, and oftentimes they take authors, a good 2-3 years to write. And we wanted this, it's a hot topic. Our publisher wanted this out quickly. We wanted it out quickly too. So we made goals to write this within a year. And
1 second, we got a golf cart coming by. Joys of live recording.
Yeah, and so writing a book in a year has been it's been a learning experience. It's been go. But yeah, definitely handling the fact that things are changing all the time. We've learned to adapt and make certain rules for ourselves about how to approach that. And one of them we decided pretty early on is, we want to write about LLMs in production. And even though, it seems every week there's at least one big white paper that comes out that, we think, oh, this is going to change the game completely. Well, we kind of put it on hold and we kind of wait, because there's always some paper out there. There's always new research coming out, but so much of research never actually makes it to production, never actually makes it to, what people will actually use to get the job done, to make money, to support their company. And so we mostly focus on what do we see companies actually use to get LLMs into production.
How much of this differs, how much of putting LLMs in production differs from the traditional machine learning and production process? Is there anything that's specific to LLMs, for example, that you wouldn't have with maybe what I like to call classical machine learning, and basically anything that's not generative AI right now?
I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that I want to differ, you know what I mean? There's stuff that I want to say that is different, but I don't know how many people are really treating it all that different, and that's yet another reason why we wanted to write this, is to try and change some of that. Because, for example, we talked about data curation, there's a lot that you probably should be doing when you're looking at a data set that you want to put in an LLM, that you should be considering before you do that. And I don't know how many people are. I think.
What are some of those things? Not to spoil the plot,
Oh, sure. So here's something that we don't really talk about in the book, but speech acts, right? This is a linguistic concept of what is your speech actually doing, and considering it's a language model, right? It comes into it, and just considering hey, what are all the speech acts present in our data set versus what are the speech acts that we're expecting to get out of it?
Right.
It's something I don't know if I've ever heard anybody talk about considering.
I didn't even know what speech acts are, so.
Right.
There you go.
There's other aspects, though, different from general machine learning training. For example, oftentimes if you just have a very simple, a REMA model or sklearn model or XGBoost model, you'll monitor it in production, and when it starts going bad, just re-trigger retraining, deploy a new model. With LLMs, that doesn't necessarily work. I mean, with their giant models and things like that,
That's so much more expensive to do that retrain.
Yeah, and so there's definitely aspects where you got to understand essentially kind of the process of, stepping in, getting that fine tuning, or using tools like RLHF to essentially consistently train your model as it's running in production that are better use cases for keeping your model up to date. And so that's one of the ways we see people approach it differently versus traditional or classical ML.
One example of that I'm really excited about in our book is LoRa, low rank adaptation, where you can fine tune essentially an adapter to change only some parameters of the model, and you can have a lot of those, and they're not very big on disk, so that you don't have to retrain the whole model every time.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. And then for data sets too, I guess it seems like there's obviously the Common Crawl and Wikipedia and these other data sets, but how well do you think those? So say I'm a company and I want to have an LLM in my company. Do you suggest that I use a model that's been trained on those corpus of text, or should I try and train it on my own internal data instead, or both, or what would you do?
I would say that you should probably start by just downloading some open source models and seeing what you get.
Okay.
Just vanilla, right?
On my own data? Or?
Before you
Before
even
you do-
touch
okay.
your own data,
Got it.
right? Because you need to temper your expectations of what is even possible before you enter that realm. But once you found one that you're pretty confident in, yeah, go ahead, train it on your data, or don't train it. Just do RAG on your data and see what happens. Because that's significantly cheaper. And in a lot of cases, like if you're just wanting to build an HR bot to answer employee questions about what are your policies,
Right.
a lot of times that can get you from 0 to maybe 0.85 very cheaply. You know, not you don't really have to host it anywhere. You could have your HR guy just run it locally on his laptop. You know.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
And the same thing is often you can get away with often a much smaller model if you just want that HR bot, right? Like people don't need to go and talk about philosophy of life and, you know, what their next big career change should be, or like, you know, their existential crisis, whatever it is. They don't need to talk about that with your HR bot. They just need to understand HR policies. And so this really comes in with, you know, understanding exactly what your use case is, understanding what you need, and then kind of like you'll get a lot more bang for your buck having a bunch of smaller models than necessarily one big one that does everything. But again, that comes down to understanding your use case.
Yeah, because like Matt's saying, if you've spent the time to take your HR documents or whatever internal data set you want and turn it into like a question answer data set, Flan T5 is 380 megabytes, like the mini.
Okay.
And you can just train it on that, and it's probably good enough for your use case, because you don't need AGI for your internal chatbot.
How do you temper expectations on this, though, right? Because, I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine last night. He is part of a portfolio of companies with a very famous venture capital firm, and he was saying, so he was, so his VC firm had him and I think 10 other, you know, AI specialists go and talk to, must have been like 50 execs or something like that. And all these execs felt like they had FOMO, like they were there, like, I have to figure out a way to do large language models or AI in my company. But I feel like I'm not getting the straight answer when I talk to vendors. I know it's a very shocking revelation that a vendor might.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but but how if you were advising executives on how to think about implementing large language models in their companies, like what are some things that you would suggest, and in terms of figuring out use cases or feasibility, like we were talking about earlier?
Yeah. I mean, there's a part of me that says, why would I want to temper expectations? I want to sell this book, you know. LLMs can do everything, and so you should try to get it into
so there you have it.
production.
It's magic.
Yeah, that's actually probably a large part of what we talk about in chapter 2, and it might not feel like it at first, but when you get to the conclusion, because we spend chapter 2 talking a lot about linguistics and the basics of linguistics and how they apply, as well as kind of the history of, you know, NLP and modeling and how it's approached. And we kind of build up to get to a point where it's like, okay, now we're at LLMs. And once you have all this basic understandings of essentially, you know, what is semantics, what is syntax, what is morphology, these type of things, then you can have a better understanding of, you know, what does the model actually know, and what and have a better idea of what it can do. And then we also kind of compare it against, you know, do you need more engineering or do you need more data in order to kind of solve your problem? And so we have this graph. I think it's pretty nice, but I also created it. But it kind of has like from an easiest to hard, you know, like these are different projects that you might work on with an LLM, and this is going to be easier and this is going to be harder, as well as like, do you need more data or more engineering efforts in order to make it work? And so,
Right.
I think it comes off pretty well.
What's that spectrum then of data versus more engineering, and how do you evaluate that?
I don't know if there's a real concise way to describe that, but
Okay.
basically.
But he has a nice chart, he said, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you need more data when your task is more abstract,
Got it.
and you need more engineering when your task needs more control, right?
Okay.
You don't want your legal bot to give you spurious advice. You need more engineering around that legal bot,
Right.
but you don't need your philosophy bot to have that same set of parameters that it would use to control itself, you know?
Yeah, so one of those building blocks that we talk
Got it.
about of language is pragmatics. And pragmatics is essentially, everything that you know about the conversation that's not actually within the text. And so one of the examples is like, sure, you could build a chess bot. And, we can even use language to do chess. E4, great. But there's so much about the move E4 that adds a bunch of complexity that a language model just doesn't understand. And so you would have to do the extra work to input those pragmatics to help it understand the modeling of what chess is. And so actually building a chess bot may seem like it would be easy with an LLM because it can understand the language and what those different moves are, but it's not going to understand why, right? And so that's a simple example.
Can these models understand why?
That is an unanswerable question at this point, right? Because maybe, but how would you tell, right?
Right.
I tend to think no, because like you look at how we create our tokenization, right? It's just a dictionary, it's an index dictionary,
Right.
essentially, with subwords. If you're using that, I mean, just whatever you decide is a token. And then how do we get from that tokenized vector into embeddings? It's that positional frequentive mapping into an embedding, right? And none of that carries any semantic value. None of that carries any pragmatic value. We're trying to synthesize the semantics using only syntax. And
Right. It was a bit of a joking question.
Oh, sure.
But but it's interesting though, because what was it? Last week when I was in London, I was One Cicada. No, he's a knowledge graph expert. I would say one of the world's foremost experts in this. But he was doing some research in terms of using large language models or LLMs and knowledge graphs.
cool.
Yeah, which I think might provide it more of the context and can figure it out. But he had this preliminary, and the research is still preliminary, but it was interesting. The results were basically, without a knowledge graph, hallucinations were just off the charts. Like,
Yeah.
it was basically like flipping a coin whether this thing was going to make a bunch of shit up or not. So,
Yeah.
but with a knowledge graph, it got a lot more of the answers correct, right? And so it was interesting. It was a very interesting discussion. It was more interesting also because it was at the Alan Turing Institute. So we were
Sure.
lecture series. So it was like just a lot of people spending a lot of time on these problems. But I think he had definitely had some convincing preliminary results, at least. So
Yeah,
We'll
I
see.
mean, well, one of the case in point here is that prompt engineering exists, right?
right.
And that's how we know that it doesn't really understand why at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's
The fact that we can engineer a prompt is part of the problem there.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That's very, very true.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't, right? I mean, going off of just those basic building blocks I was talking about, these shouldn't work at all, and it's kind of a miracle that they do.
It is kind of a miracle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because these things, they started off as basically just, I think it was a translation app that Google was building, right? And
Yeah, the transformer.
yeah, and all of a sudden everyone's like, hey, but look what else it can do. So,
Yeah. That's what got me into it originally, actually, was I was working as a translator and wanted to do machine
Oh,
translation
yeah.
better.
what languages were you translating?
Slovak and Russian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Those are from I'm an American. I don't speak any other language.
Sure.
I barely speak English correctly. Those are hard languages.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. How did the bots work out?
Oh, horrendously. I was a student, right? I wish that they had done well. I did release, I called it Sloven BERT China, it's just a BERT model that would do just masked prediction for Slovak, and it ended up being pretty great. I was able to get permission from the Slovak National Corpus to incorporate some of their data into it.
Damn.
I was very impressed, and to me at the time that was just straight magic, and I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. So here we are.
Here you are, and now you're doing it.
Yeah, not translation anymore, but maybe we'll get to that.
I mean, you're doing a different type of translation, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
All the robots. That's interesting. Well, walk me through this. I mean, so there's probably a lot to unpack. I don't want to give away your entire book on the podcast, but I'm always curious when I talk to writers. How do you guys work together on the book? How do you guys come up with your research, and how do you keep yourselves from killing each other writing this book? So you can answer any question in any order.
I'm pretty sure Chris will be dead by the end of this.
Yeah, I will.
But from you or from just your work?
Both.
Yeah, probably both. Chris is the writer who will sit down on a weekend and get 20 pages out.
Oh my God.
And I'm the writer that picks at it and gets 30 minutes in here, 30 minutes in there, but a little bit every day. And so yeah, it's I get on and I'm like, Chris, why haven't you touched this in a week, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And different writing styles. But honestly, what amazes me so far is that our writing styles are very similar. We have very similar humor. I think it's really hard to tell which one of us wrote which part of the book, which I think is really valuable, because I've read lots of books. I think the last one was a pact book, throwing shade. But where you would read the chapters, and every chapter felt it was written by a different author, and it probably was, and it's just it was just very distracting from understanding what you were trying to learn because of their different approaches. But I think we work really well together as far as that goes, and I think overall it's coming along really, really well. So
yeah, I don't have anything to contradict there.
Really?
Yeah, he explained it perfectly.
It sounds exactly the same as when I was writing the book with Matt. It was he would wait till the weekend and crank out 20, 30 pages. I was the methodical one every day working on it. Then I had to say, Matt, where the hell is everything? I'll get to it. You better get to it this weekend. Then I'd leave comments for him in the Google Doc, WTF, why are you even bringing this up here? I mean, our poor development editor had to watch us just go through, I think, some pretty vicious back and forth. But
yeah, there's a little bit of that in the comment section. I think
the comments.
I think Chris turns them off now.
I do. I'll just turn off the comments. I know what I'm supposed to be writing, and so I'll just fill things in, and then I'll go work on comments later. They're too distracting, man. I'll get riled.
Oh my god.
Especially, I mean, you probably know our 1P going through the reviewers and everything. It was a freaking roller coaster, man.
Oh, tell me about that. Because Manning's process is different than O'Reilly's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So before we're allowed to release to MEEP, we have to go through.
Sorry, there's a
semi.
Nice.
Beautiful. So
I love recording outside.
Geez, you got to drive all the way down the street with that?
He's gonna drive down a hill with that big dump truck. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Anyway, before we're allowed to release to MEEP, we have to go through an editing process with someone other than our technical reviewer and our actual editor. Right? They hire some reviewers to come in and read the portion that they want to go into that program. Geez, it feels like it's even louder over there.
No worries. But okay, so before it goes to early access, they have to have a team of their reviewers go through it too. Then is that how that works?
Yeah. So I think they get people who are interested, essentially in the Manning network. So it's not necessarily people who work for Manning, but 15 essentially kind of more experts in the field, and they don't necessarily have to be experts. Maybe they're students in the field or what
maybe
have
they're
you.
just experts who are adjacent, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
And so people who are interested in reading it, and then so they usually select 15. And that's
Damn.
yeah, and a lot. It's quite a bit, but that's because they usually see maybe like 10 of them actually read it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For us, that's actually one of the metrics I look at, and we had all 15 read ours, so that was really exciting that people were interested in it.
I can edit this stuff out too. Don't worry about it.
Cool.
Yeah, no worries.
Like, can you guys get a proper location for your recording?
But yeah, of our 15, we had like a full spectrum of people who are probably even more expert than we are in the field versus people who have like never even spun up, like not even a small language model before. And that was pretty apparent from the comments. And I mean, I love your content about comments on your book and comments from reviewers. We experienced that, right? Where some of them were so helpful, so spot on, and so just insightful and really made the book better. And some of them you're like, did you even finish this sentence before asking that question, you know?
Yeah, yep. Well, it's getting you ready for when your book is out in the wild. I mean, there will be no shortage of comments that you, at a minimum, you're just going to shake your head and say, I have no idea how this person turns on their phone in the morning, let alone is able to read our book.
Yeah.
Or order it. But here we go.
The good news is that for us, I don't know if Matt thinks this, but I felt like the vast majority of them were insightful and helpful, and that was great.
Yeah, I think what was really fun for me is when people were reading the book, they would stop in one paragraph and ask a question or like essentially make a comment based off of what they were thinking about. And it would always be like, oh, the very next paragraph, I answer that, you know? And so it's just, and so it was nice as an author. It was
validating.
It was validating to know that we were leading their thoughts and how they were thinking about things and in the direction we wanted them to go. As going back and like figuring out how to edit the book, though, it was a bit frustrating because it's like, do I just say that's in the next paragraph, or do I just ignore this, or you know what is it? But yeah, no, it was, you know, both positive and negative, and you never exactly know 100% what to do with one of those type of comments, but
you don't. And I think it's funny because you when you were reviewing my book, so for the audience, Matt Sharp actually was one of the reviewers for Fundamentals of Data Engineering. That's how he got so excited to want to write his own book, I'm sure. But I mean, I think there are definitely comments he would leave like, are you going to address this thing? And like, you know, then they get down the page, it's like, yeah, there it is. I think it was the other comments. So it's so, you know, you've definitely struck gold, I think, and I think to your point, when the reader is, you know, I think thinking along those lines, right? They're not just taking a dig at you at every turn, which also happens in comments.
Yeah.
Reviewers, they just nitpick, which is fine. I mean, I'd rather have somebody nitpick the hell out of a book, and like, because it shows they care, for one.
Especially as a 1P reviewer, right? Like before it ever hits the public. Yes, nitpick it there.
Yeah,
I love that.
For sure.
I think I was a bit nicer though. I would at least comment, oh, here it is. This answers my previous question.
Oh yeah,
you know,
you were very nice in your comments. It was
just leaving it empty of like, hey, you should still answer this question even if you answer it later on in the book.
That's one of those things you're like, you aren't reading this, right? You're just randomly putting comments in. That's interesting. No, but you know, I think the writing process is one of those things where you just gotta beat the crap out of your book, and like the other piece that you're gonna find, if you haven't already, is like editing and revising. Is like just that's how the book becomes the book.
Yeah.
You got your first draft. I always do what's called a zero draft, actually, which is like word vomit, whatever happens to be on your mind. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be structurally good. It's just like get the ideas going.
That's what my notes app on my phone looks like.
Oh, really?
It's just pages and pages of that.
Do you take notes like typing them, or do you do voice notes?
Swipe.
Okay. Oh, okay. Man of efficiency. I like this. So, yeah, I do the same. I got like a Notion board too, where I have like all the articles I have to read.
Oh, that's way more organized than me. That rocks.
That's closer to what I have. I have a Notion board with like it's just full of links. Essentially all the research I'm doing about it, and just comments about things I want to make sure we include in the book. But yeah, no, I'm much worse about that first part of just word vomiting out. Like every word vomit I do, I'm like immediately have to I can't like this. I have to edit it.
This is wrong.
Yeah, this is wrong. But yeah, no, definitely writing is a learning process and finding out what works for you and getting better at the things that you're not good at.
Yeah. Well, and we're getting to see how those initial word vomits turned out, right? I'm loving chapter 2. I have a lot of strong feelings about it because like linguistics is where I come from, and one of the
chapter 2 on linguistics.
It's kind of an overview, and it's peeling back the fact that like because these are language models, you have to solve for linguistic features, right? If you want to make sure that your model does math better, you got to do tokenization. There's no way around it. You can't just say we used math to do it and import it from NLTK and just have that be it, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's linguistics for LLMs. We always do everything we can to kind of tie it back to, hey, this is why you should care.
What I'm loving about it, though, is not how it's been turning out. It's the fact that since we wrote it, I've had like dozens of people come in my DMs on LinkedIn or on Reddit or other places and ask me questions that chapter is answering. I know that it's valuable, and I'm really loving that.
How do you figure out what to add and what to skip or remove?
I don't know if there's a golden bullet for that or a silver bullet for that, right?
Yeah.
One of the ways that I have been doing to add, which adds a little bit of time to the process, but I'll go and I'll ask ChatGPT or GPT-4 about the subject that I'm writing about and wait until I get that hallucination. I'll keep talking with it and I'll see it start like severely deviating and getting things wrong, and I'm like, that needs to go in the book because you can't just get that from ChatGPT or from Google, right?
Yeah, that. Once Chris told me that hack, I found it also very helpful to kind of do that. It means that we're providing, when you do that you will be providing value that people won't just get easily somewhere else. I will tell you, working with a publisher though, like they want you to cut and keep whatever will sell, right? Like that's one of their priorities is keeping that. But as a writer who really wants to provide something useful, sometimes you have to say, hey, like, to your audience or to when you're writing the book is like, I know you might not think this is useful, but it is. Like,
we had to cut so much else out, and this is one of the golden nuggets. Just like,
well, I mean, you're gonna have to push on your publisher too sometimes, and let them know like this really does need to be in there. Because I mean, you guys are the experts; they're not. They know how to produce books that sell, but I think if you let them go too far, it's gonna destroy the vision of what you're trying to do, and that's not great either. So it's a balancing act.
It is a balancing act, and part of it has to be on us. Like we've removed some stuff that I really loved, but on the plus side, like this isn't a book that's going to make you an expert on how to train LLMs, and it's not going to make you an expert in math or linguistics. It's not meant to.
Oh, it's not?
No, I wish.
Yeah, we would need a whole other book for those things.
Yeah, we would need more authors too. But
have robots do it.
Yeah, right. But it will, and so this has helped us temper that, and like, if I want to go write that book later, I can, and now I've got ideas for it, and I have drafts for it,
Sorry, we're all just distracted by all the fun things happening at the Capitol right now. It's actually a pretty nice day out. It's really, really nice. Not a cloud in the sky. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like the things I've been thinking about lately with books is like, what is the purpose of a book in 2023, 2024, right? And we can get into existential stuff like this, but I've been really trying to unpack, like, in an age when you can theoretically just use bots to create a book. And so one thing we're talking about at lunch was Amazon had just announced that an author can publish only 3 books a day. Right? Only three. But that's insane because it's very clear. You can see what's happening here.
Yeah.
Right? And so...
well, I would encourage our readers to build a RAG version of our book, download the PDF, do one of those talk to PDFs. I mean, we'll probably have a mini application of that in the book, some code that they can just copy and paste to do it on our book and find the things that they want. You know, it's an encyclopedia.
Yeah. One second here. Just, let everyone drive off. I can just edit this part out.
Yeah. Yeah, the one day we record is when they're gonna do all the landscaping.
So it's still gonna be quieter than my house. So. Okay, we're back, I guess. But no, it's just something that's I've been thinking about when books can be mass-produced in a matter of hours. Like, what is the nature of a book right now? You know, so what's going to make a book different than, you know, I would say all this stuff that's about to be churned out.
They're probably going to use our book to train the next round of models.
Yeah,
to write
thanks,
books,
guys.
Right?
So,
well, that's great. Changing the world for sure. No, I mean, we kind of talked about that. Like, you know, currently our book is hitting the edge. It's not the content we're putting in it. You're not able to easily get out of other models, and so we're adding information. We're adding real value there. I think the other aspect is you know, right now at least, it's really hard to write a book just purely out of ChatGPT that's actually like enjoyable to read. You know, and
that's a fair point.
You know, like, it understands humor, can point out why something is funny, but it doesn't know how to tell a good joke yet. You know, like, it kind of gets the syntax and what should be funny, but it doesn't actually understand, you know, delivery or other things.
It's good
like
at
that.
dad jokes, right? I think, like, really like plain, simple, obvious humor.
Are you positive it's not just going to the dad joke API and returning
I might
that?
be doing that too.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to make some dad jokes before, not on purpose, but it just ended up doing that.
Right.
Like, make a joke about something or something, and it did okay. But I think to your point, it's not. I wouldn't know. It would bomb as a stand-up comic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, you can ask it, you know, to give you a dad joke of something specific, you know, something about, I don't know, statistics or LLMs or, you know, because a human can kind of make those jokes. They understand their domain well enough and interject humor into it, but LLMs still don't understand how to make that cross connection.
Like, a more technical answer to exactly what you're saying, LLMs are syntax, right? They're syntax based. What that means for us is that, you know, most of our humor revolves around semantics, pragmatics, fallacy, and ambiguity within those areas, right?
Interesting.
That's how our humor works, and smart people figure out what's the most humorous. Because if it just works but it's not really funny, that's a dad joke, right? Yeah. they're the ones that figure out what's actually funny. But you need more of that pragmatic knowledge, more of that real world stuff in order to get there, and the model just doesn't have that.
No.
And the person who figures out how to insert pragmatics into our embeddings, dude, that's a billionaire right there. You know, that's a $1 billion idea.
Yeah, and this might be coming off as our book is really funny, but I think there's a few good jokes in there. We've had compliments on our humor, but it's definitely an informational book, and so there's only so.
Hopefully it's the funniest technical book you read.
Yeah, hopefully you enjoy reading it. We want to create an enjoyable reading experience, not just.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
You know, I've read enough technical books to know that what I didn't want to read.
What do you mean by that?
So, like, I've read essentially books that kind of aim to be the encyclopedia or the or like the dictionary of it. So, like, I'm thinking of the Rails 5-way or Rails 6-way or something. You know, like, these are just massive books that really go into the details of exactly how, like, Ruby on Rails is written, and they're great references. They're not enjoyable to read cover to cover. And then I read other books that are meant to be read cover to cover, and but they kind of lack the information, or you kind of walk away feeling like you wasted your time, and that's not what we want our readers to feel.
It's a fine balance, because I mean, at the end of the day, the question that my editor would always ask is, does it serve the reader, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's always a question you got to ask yourself too. Does it serve the reader? And if it doesn't, then it needs to go or it needs to change. And it's always been my guiding light, at least, you know. And
That rocks.
I think it's a good approach to have, because I think in some cases authors want to serve their own ego. You know, and it's a really easy thing to do, because it's like, oh, this is my one chance to talk about this thing. You know, let's get this in more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna, like, that was us first. Like, our first drafts were, you know, we both tend to, you know, interject large words into our conversations, even when we're talking with each other. And so, like, that's how our writing was, and it almost came off as snobbery, right? We're like, no.
Snobbery, dude.
Well, I mean, who called you out on that, though? Or did anyone call you out on it?
We called each other, and our editor called us out on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
he could tell, or she could. So,
Yeah.
No, I mean that's. I'm sure they see this a lot, because I notice this especially with new writers. Not saying you guys are new, but you're new to this.
No, this is our first. We're new.
Okay, you're new. Yeah, but you. The tendency with technical authors I notice when they're starting out is they want to sound really smart, and the way you sound really smart is to use words that you probably don't even understand what they mean, but they sound cool, right? And so if it has more than it has less than 3 syllables, it's pretty much a useless word. And so, you know, but I think you learn really quickly that brevity and being crisp and clear usually means you're going to use very simple words.
That's one thing we have been complimented on is one of the editors was saying that we initially, like, reading our first drafts, every time they're like, can you explain what this word means, or can you use a smaller word, or do you really have to put these together? It's hard to read. But we've been complimented on our ability to go and rephrase things using words that everyone can understand. It's hard, and it's an exercise we have to keep doing, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's going well.
Yeah,
I hope it's worth it.
there's definitely an aspect where when you first explain something, you want to explain it technically and how you understand it and how a peer would.
Yeah, I want to say apotheosis in our book. Right?
Please don't.
No.
and how a peer would want to hear it and understand. But yeah, like, kind of changing it so that way a more general audience, and kind of simplifying it that way. It just improves clarity. It doesn't necessarily simplify the information that we're sharing. It just makes it more clear.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's one of these things. I remember hearing I can't remember where I heard this on maybe on some writing podcast, but they were saying, like, you get good at writing the book you're working on. Because somebody's asking, how do you get good at writing books? Let this guy clear through here real quick. So I got the leaf blower now, so all kinds of fun toys out here. So we're just making a clapping noise here. Okay, we're back. So yeah, I guess, you know, you guys are into it now. When's the book supposed to be done?
That's a good question. It was original contracts were supposed to be done by November 30th, and
We're still shooting for that, is what I will say about it.
yeah,
This will come out after November 30th, and I'm just kidding.
I mean, it probably will. It probably won't come out till early next year, but we'll hopefully have at least, like, the first draft, everything written, going through edits by that time.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to know, because I thought our first 3 chapters were done, 3 months ago, and then I was surprised to find out that how many, like, rounds of editing that you kind of go through when you work with a publisher. And so it's a learning experience, but it's coming along, and every single time we go through it, it gets better. And
that helps.
I do think people are really going to enjoy the finished product. So
that's a good attitude to have.
It's a great attitude.
you should continue this. Versus, like, nobody's gonna read this piece of crap. They're really gonna hate it when it comes out. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, if no one else reads it, I know, like, it'll make a good it'll look good on my mother's bookshelf. So
Yeah, dude. Our contract was a minimum of 400 pages, so it'll be a great bookend
minimum
at
of
least.
400 pages.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a beefy book.
I guess that's what ours. We were supposed to have 450 on ours. We came right around that. Strangely enough, you right to the page count. So it's
there's some truth in that, because sometimes we're thinking, oh, we should cut this. It doesn't necessarily fit in the book, and we're like, but it's really good content. We have the space for it. We
have the space.
We have the space for it.
And then other times we're like, oh no, like let's get rid of it. Like it doesn't matter, And like it's funny when you write a book though, is people do expect you, to take the time to kind of explain these details that you're not going to get in a blog post, that you're not going to get in like a video series, right? Like people want the in-depth content. That's why they went and bought a book, and so we try to provide that where we can.
I am going to try and sneak in someplace in the book just a reference to download, like importing Chime and having it play random noises as your script goes on.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Because that's my favorite blog post and LinkedIn post that I see probably once a month.
Really?
Have you tried using Chime in your Python scripts to alert you with sound?
I've never played with it.
Me neither, but I see it all the time.
Oh my god. Are these like sponsored posts or something? Or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just people, and I don't lose any respect for somebody if they do that. I've just seen it so many times that's like doing machine learning on the Boston housing data set or the Titanic data set for me at this point.
I guess I never noticed Chime, but when I hear that, I always think of Amazon's video service. They have Chime.
Yeah.
Because I had to do some stuff with AWS, and they made you use Chime, and I'm like, please, can we not use this? No offense to the people at AWS who have to work on this thing, but yeah, it's not what I prefer, but whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, cool. Any other thoughts on writing large language models? Any other?
I mean tons, but
we could be here all day. But
yeah,
I know
we
you gotta
could.
be going back to.
I just got to talk with Newmont University here in Utah about how to change the curriculum when large language models are open and available to students.
Oh yeah.
Right. I'm really excited to see how that plays out, because I'm hoping that teachers take the same hack that we're doing to write our book and make the testing harder in that way, where you get tested on stuff that you can't just get out of ChatGPT or out of a Google search. I think that I'm hoping to see and this is weird imagery, but just the bar raised for like our testing and our schooling.
Oh yeah,
and I'm really excited to see my kids grow up with this stuff and how much smarter they're going to be than I am.
Yeah.
Maybe not smarter, maybe just access to more knowledge.
Just be more efficient.
More efficient. Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, LLMs are definitely gonna change, how we live. I was seeing a post yesterday where he's like, me at work, oh, I love LLMs. They save me so much time at work. And then it's like, me at home, hey, stop using LLMs. That's cheating for your homework and other things like that. And it's definitely an interesting time for parents right now. But
oh yeah.
To a certain extent, I think, 50 years from now, like, LLMs are just going to be like a calculator, right? It's just something everyone uses, both for homework and for work. And, it's going to change a lot of different aspects of just kind of how we live enough that we'll all have adjusted to it.
I don't even think, it'll have hit, I would say, maturation when you don't even notice it's there anymore, right?
Well, and that's the cover of our book, right? It's a dude inside a printing press.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I was wondering what that was.
The mechanical Turkish printing press.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good image.
We have a lot of Easter eggs in there and references to like Johannes Gutenberg and making the printing press, and because we feel like LLMs are going to be just as revolutionary as the printing press was, especially when it comes to making information and language more readily available to people. And so
we love the imagery. We love that imagery because you're not good at using a printing press if you don't already have an idea of what you need. Yeah. Right? You can't just go and chop, got a book. It's just random letters.
Kind of a crap book, but
exactly.
Well, I think the concerns I have is like Amazon is just going to be I mean, it's already a junk show. We were talking with Matt Harrison about this during lunch, right? And he's written a lot of books, but it's like, it's only going to get worse, I would say, in terms of just quantity. So I think the bar is raised in terms of, you could probably produce an okay book before large language models came out. Now you have to do a really, really good book to stand out, because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. One of my old coworkers, his name's Cameron Bell, and
I know Cam. Yeah.
Yeah, we worked at MasterCard together. He's brilliant, love him.
Yeah.
And he published a children's book using, I think, a GPT-3 model. But you're reminding me that like he put in a lot of work to make sure that he was prompting it correctly, and to make sure that the story was coherent, and to make sure. And I don't know when this becomes more mainstream. I don't know how many people are going to do that same level of quality control that you're talking about.
I think because of the incentives, especially on Amazon, is just crank them out and get the sales, right? I mean, I'm seeing this in my book. There's several knockoffs of Fundamentals of Data Engineering on Amazon, and if I downloaded the Kindle samples, you can tell a robot wrote it. No human in the right mind would waste the time to do that.
I should knock off your book.
You should not. I mean, shit, join the line.
I'm just kidding.
Well, okay, so a week before our book came out, there was already a summary of our book. You know the summary books? There was already one of those out a week before our book was supposed to come out. And that was really weird. But then I noticed that the same publisher had summaries of Alex Jones's Great Reset and all these like weird, far right fringe books, and then our book.
Weird.
It was very weird.
I love that. how was that cognitive dissonance and just the surrealism of
everything
you
about
seeing? You're like, is my book a far right book?
Apparently, the Proud Boys read it. I'm kidding, but no, it was surreal. I was like, what is this? And of course, I downloaded the sample of it on the Kindle, and I realized, oh, a human didn't write this. This is
nice.
Yeah, this is probably, if you guys are successful, it's going to happen to you. It's just it's interesting to have happen. And who was it? Like Nick Singh, him. He wrote Ace of Data Science interview. Like, he doesn't do digital books. At least the last time I checked, he only does print.
That's a strategy.
Yeah, but then people started making fake print books of his.
Oh, crazy! Oh, you can't get away from it. Oh no.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting though. Like I said, because I feel like just the bar has been raised because it's super easy to make a pretty mediocre book. So.
Well, if the bar's been raised that much, I hope ours is the last successful book.
It might very well be the last human book written ever, actually.
Yeah, people take our book and replace all other books after this. No, I think there's still room. Like, there's still room for writers, and they're gonna do well. Like, there'll be, forums and back alleys where people recommend certain books, and that'll be how you find the good stuff. Right, like you'll no longer trust places like Amazon where people game the system and pay thousands of people to give some random book 5 stars or whatever.
Yeah.
So
does that mean I need to make a Hacker News account?
God forbid, man. You really you're gonna do some painful things to promote this
Gotcha.
book.
Yeah.
But you already said you're on Reddit, so I mean.
That predates the book.
That place is a hellscape.
It is a hellscape.
Oh my God. Well, awesome, guys. It's great chatting with you as always. For people who want to learn more about your book, where can they find it?
Let me pull up the link.
This is affiliate link he's going to pull up.
No, I was actually going to. I can. You want my affiliate link so I can win this comp?
To you. It's just Manning.com. Yep. Look up LLMs in production.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good. And I guess if people want to find you guys, how can they do that? You guys on a...
yeah, it's literally Manning.com, books, LLMs in production. That's the link.
Easy enough.
Yeah, you can find me mostly on LinkedIn, Matthew Sharp. I post content all the time there, lots of data content. People know me as the clean code, since I write so much clean code tips and tricks. But
oh yeah, you do. You and Laszlo are on the clean code tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Keep fighting the good fight on that one. What about you, Chris? Where can people find you?
People can find me on LinkedIn as well. It's Chris Brousseau. I have just Chris B, because so many
Okay.
people can't spell my name, which is fine. You don't have to learn it to connect with me. I'm happy to connect. But my tagline is I want to build Star Wars stuff, which is true.
I remember seeing that the first time. I was like, okay, this guy's pretty cool.
Thanks.
So, yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for hanging out here. It's a lovely day staring at the state capitol again. So thanks to the audience. We'll talk to everyone later.